any autonomous vehicle needs to be thinking about manufacturing, right? And so we can put technologies towards those programs and help accelerate them. But also the future of manufacturing, we can argue about when, but the future is autonomous robots building probably more autonomous robots. Hi, my name is Travis Demeester. I'm a contract program manager at the Defense Innovation Unit, and you are watching the Drone Wars podcast.
Travis, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, Dan, stoked to be here.
Yeah, it's good to get you out of your LA bubble and down to San Diego every once in a while, huh?
Yeah, well, good to get back here.
Yeah.
I was right over here across the street in Miramar for 6-7 years.
And what were you doing up there?
Flying the Super Stallion.
Very cool.
Yeah, CH-53 Sikorsky.
So tell us a little bit about your background.
So I took a non-standard path and loved it. Aerospace undergrad. I was into Top Gun, wanted to be an astronaut, fighter pilot, whatever. So aerospace was that path, and then found myself at Northrop Grumman right out of college. So out in Palmdale, in the desert, working on the B-2 program.
Lovely.
Yeah, exactly. And then I moved to their Chicago location for a bit as well, doing some work there. But I realized, like, this is 2005. Iraq is raging. I'm sitting here behind a desk being an engineer, and I'm 24, 25 years old. So I was sitting on the wrong side of the table, right? So I got out of engineering, commissioned in the Marine Corps, and went to flight school and learned to fly helicopters.
Very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I landed there. I was in San Diego for about 6 years of that, Marine Corps for the better part of a decade.
Where's your favorite burrito spot in town?
There's one in Point Loma that I'm dying because I can't remember the name. But you know what I love about San Diego? The San Diego style burrito, right?
It's
Carne,
nothing like it.
guac, and some pico, like beautiful. You can't even find those in LA.
No rice and beans in your burrito down here.
No.
No, only protein.
A lot of it too.
A lot of it, exactly. A lot of salt. All right, so tell us about your journey post Marine Corps.
Yeah. Got out of the Marine Corps, went to business school. It seemed like the path. And this is 2014, 2015-ish. And I didn't realize it, but there was a big movement afoot in defense innovation. And at the time, it was loose. Like, some people had some ideas, they wanted change. And so there were some pockets of people starting to band together to make a difference in that space. Got wrapped into a project sponsored by former Secretary of Defense William Perry. He wanted to know, what does it look like if we take a problem out of the DoD and put it in front of innovators in Silicon Valley and see what they can do with it? Didn't realize he was prototyping for what would become a core DIU process, right? So then shortly thereafter, Ash Carter announces the start of DIU, et cetera. So I didn't realize it, but I was there on the ground floor, right?
That's
just
pretty cool.
Total coincidence. At the time, I wanted to be a marketing manager at Lululemon. I was like, get me away from the DoD.
Right.
I had multiple deployments, like dove in, burnout in retrospect, right? But there I was, the gravity brought me back. It was a really cool opportunity at the time.
We can still get you in some tights if you'd like.
Not on camera. Firestorm.
Yeah, exactly. All down the leg.
Yeah. Pink legging.
Pink leggings we'll have one Firestorm, one DIU. All right, so tell us what you do at DIU now. Right?
Well, so in that period, between getting to know that innovation community, I went off on my own quite a bit. I started a couple small companies, like not venture, but like studio type. I want to get after these problems. So really defense tech, hardware tech, anything in that hard to build space that was, we're seeing now that it's changed a lot. Then we were just starting to feel it. So everything across the board, marketing, ops, fundraising, DoD facing stuff, et cetera. I was working on a project where we were doing conceptual engineering and marketing communication, visualization, tactics development for an amphibious version of the C-130. AFSOC had sponsored that. They said, we need to be able to land in the water. We want this.
Spruce Goose 2.0?
Right. This thing has floats on it the size of a regional jet on each side, right? It's huge.
Very cool.
So super fun project. Really de-risk and help them understand the problem, et cetera. A CR shut that down at the time, and coincidentally, a couple of days later, a buddy of mine called and asked if I wanted to roll into DIU. So perfect fit, perfect timing.
Yeah. How
That's
many
how it
years have
landed.
you been there for?
A little over 3 years now. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about your portfolio.
So I'm the architect behind what DIU is doing in advanced manufacturing. The problem space is huge. Everybody knows it's a problem. It's a little more difficult to get to because it's supply chain, right? Not just acquiring an end capability. So anything advanced manufacturing, and then some of the periphery technologies like digital engineering, like supply chain control tower technologies, et cetera. Anything in that space is where we're focused on. I'm building that out of our autonomy portfolio. And so that has interesting overlaps in two ways. One, any autonomous vehicle needs to be thinking about manufacturing, right? And so we can put technologies towards those programs and help accelerate them. But also the future of manufacturing, we can argue about when, but the future is autonomous robots building probably more autonomous robots.
Robots building robots. That's what you
Exactly.
said on stage about 2 weeks ago, right?
Exactly. So it's a good fit there. We're growing our efforts there. There's a huge demand, big problem signals we're getting after.
I mean, it seems like it's not even political at this point, right? Defense innovation took the shape of industrial based policy under the last admin, and now it's just, dare to say, because JD Vance was on stage a couple of days ago, now it's almost like manufacturing is now an American dynamism, like part of the story, right?
That's exactly right. And the challenge is that even though the problem is not politicized, how we solve that, there are a lot of different people competing for what the future of manufacturing looks like. And we've got to sort that out. I think in a lot of ways, there's some low hanging fruit technology wise to revolutionize our industrial base, but changing a big ecosystem like that is hard, right? It's people and companies and how the ecosystem is laid out, and that all needs to tie together at the end of the day. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now is jockeying for what the future of manufacturing looks like.
And so how do you have to pick winners, or do you have to build a framework? Like, how do you kind of navigate that? Because it is a very tumultuous sea.
It is, yeah. And to be clear, my role at DIU, I work with them on a contract basis. Like I do not speak on behalf of the government.
Had to throw that out there.
Yeah, right.
Now you can actually say anything you'd like.
Yes. Okay. Now grab my beer.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's always going to be an element of winner picking, right? It's just how you do that is what really matters. So there's part of the story is there, right? Seeing who's pressing the envelope, seeing whose technology vector aligns with where we see everything else going. There's an art to that. Part of it is building infrastructure to support it, right? And so the word infrastructure I use very, very broadly. It could be digital infrastructure, it could be physical infrastructure, could be institutional infrastructure, and how the DoD and other organizations are structured. But we need to be thoughtful about laying that groundwork so that the advanced manufacturing community can plug in and run with it. And so, when I think about it, successful infrastructure, I'll use an analogy of the highway system, right? I drove down from LA today. Didn't have to collect a bunch of data about how I might get here. Didn't have to I trusted the infrastructure works. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to have traffic. My phone's going to tell me where to go. I'm going to get there, right? And that's part of the point of infrastructure, is this trusted underlying foundation that accelerates the entire effort. So finding the right infrastructure to invest in, I think, is an important piece. And then I think another side of it is incentivizing the use of a lot of these new technologies. There's risk aversion on the buyer side, right? Not a lot of people are incentivized to take risks on a wild new manufacturing technology that might have a lot of upside, but could end their career as a program manager if they bet too hard on it, right? Yep. And so de-risking some of those efforts, or incentivizing the use of digital engineering, advanced manufacturing technologies, advanced manufacturing paradigms that we haven't used before, right? Like that's how I think about that problem.
let's focus on that for a minute, right? Do you think the incentive structure, right, where people are afraid because they're going to, potentially blow up a program by picking an upstart technology, do you think that is a kind of middle level bureaucracy issue, or is that more of a top level, like, I don't know what technologies are out there and I want to protect my way as I kind of climb up the chain problem? Or is it a bit of both?
My opinion is that it's the problem exists at the mid-layer bureaucracy level, but the problem exists because of policies that are created at the leadership level.
Okay.
And the delicate balance there, right? If I'm a program executive officer and I've got massive responsibility to deliver capability on a no-fail basis, and then I'm going to make policies so that my program managers are building towards that and not necessarily taking risks. So I think to fix it, I think the symptom plays out in the middle level.
Okay.
I think to fix it, you've got to make some deep underlying policy changes that align incentives better.
Yeah. And how do you think we should do that? Or what, maybe better question, what are a couple things we could do in your opinion? Because you've been looking at this space quite, deeply for the last 3-4 years.
Yeah. So I think we need to have more Horizon 2 type organizations, right? We've got a lot of focus on operational, where you're measuring things different. Risk tolerance is low. You need low cost. You need must deliver, right? We need some protective space around the types of organizations that have more risk to experiment, that have bigger risk budgets, if you will. I think that's part of it. We're missing a playground in between R&D. We need something that operationally deploys things that are risky and kind of at the edge. Traditionally, SOCOM gets used in that way a lot because they're willing to take those risks. And so you see that as a pathway where new tech, they sell the SOCOM first. Once those operators are good with it, then you see it proliferating through the DoD. So that's one angle. This is a little more generic, but this is what I see playing out. There are a wild divergence of ideas about how the DoD should fix itself, right? All sorts of ideas out there, specifically the procurement process. We need to converge on good ideas more. Like everybody who's recognizing the same problem, right? And has their own opinions about how it should be solved. You've got a lot of stakeholders. You've got Congress, you've got executive leadership, you've got the DoD itself. Stakeholders go on and on. We need to spend less time arguing about how to fix that and make some real compromises to fix it. Because even if it's not perfect, fixing it is going to be a lot better than where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, the completely unsolicited advice I give everyone who wants to come into defense tech is do not assume it will get fixed, right? As though we know it needs to be fixed. There's, like you said, a lot of ways to fix it, but like this is just how it's been. So if you can figure out how to operate within the confines of today, which is very difficult, and you expect to lose 99 out of 100 times if you're a small company, if it is ever fixed, then you'll do great.
Yeah. I mean, it's like being an Intel operator at some point. Like you have to understand the playing field and who's doing what and how do they link together and what do they want, right? Like and unfortunately then that burden gets placed on every company that wants to innovate and sell to the DoD,
yep.
Right? They've got to have in addition to already doing the hard work of developing an autonomy stack or building a production system that can manufacture at scale, they also have to be really good at Intel just to be able to sell their final product.
Right.
And I think that's a burden we need to clear off.
Drone Wars is recorded from Firestorm's global headquarters in San Diego, California. Each episode is filmed inside our X-Cell, a modular industrial-grade manufacturing facility designed to be deployed anywhere in the world within 24 hours for on-demand drone production. Each week on the podcast, we bring you cutting-edge insights from unmanned industry leaders. Listen as they share the breakthroughs and technologies they're working on, the hard lessons they've learned, and the bold predictions about what the next 5 to 10 years in unmanned systems and advanced manufacturing have in store for us. Enjoying the show so far? Then be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show. Let's go back to something you talked about earlier. Let's talk about supply chain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And let's do it in the context of, unmanned systems. What are the kind of biggest limb facts out there right now that are going to prevent the U.S. from getting to the production levels we're seeing coming out of Eastern Europe, China, and to a certain extent, Iran?
Yep. This is the juicy question, right? Because it affects not just an operator who needs a capability, but it affects the American public and our economy and livelihood, and the policy implications around that. I think one of the ways that we've failed as a country and led ourselves to where we are now is that we don't have regional ecosystems building out supply chains and capabilities. China's figured that out. They've got other tools to make that happen. But they're doing it and it's working. And so you see accelerating supply chains in China, companies going out of business or offshoring in the US, and then where do we get the parts, right? Where is your supply chain? Especially when we're trying to build a supply chain that doesn't include Chinese suppliers. So I think we need to do a lot of focus on regional ecosystems. And it's one of the reasons that I'm doubling down on Los Angeles, San Diego, and the SoCal development environment, if you will, is because we have all the tools here. We've got operators here. We've got, we can build something like that here. So that's one angle. One of the effects of that, robotics, 3D printing, small UAS, like a lot of these product supply chains don't exist here anymore. The R&D isn't happening in the commercial sector here anymore in those parts. And so, you're trying to get batteries, you're trying to get brushless motors or on and on. Like we just don't have the companies to fill that space. So I think that to me is the heart of the issue is the supply chain erosion for us to either build or innovate on top of.
Right. And what part of the supply chain do you think we need to really be focused on?
With UAS specific?
Or with unmanned systems?
Yeah. I actually might turn that one on you. Like I have a few ideas, right? A couple of which I mentioned. And when I think about supply chain also, I think about intellectual capital and like rare earth metals, for example. Those are gonna flow and touch anything we're using.
Correct.
Right?
That's at the very base.
The very base.
Supply chain.
Yep. Like you're literally where you pulled it out of the ground. We have rare earth mines, right?
Yeah.
But who knows what to do with it?
And it's when you start processing it, it's where that's where we actually understand how much pollution comes from this.
Right.
I was on a call yesterday. Certain rare earths, when you process them, they create 6,000 to 12,000% more pollution than CO2.
Wow.
So it's not clean.
Yep.
It's not. And I mean, that's why China's kind of cornered that market, right? China and Mongolia. But to your point, it's in everything we do.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's everything we do. And so if we could accelerate something like that, like now you start to enable a lot more around the supply chain. Like everybody's cost basis goes down, the reliability of their supply chains goes up, et cetera. So that's one spot I'd start. I think another area is, let's say specific to UAS, propulsion is an issue, right? It's a bottleneck and it's expensive. A lot of times it can be the driver of your cost. If we could get together and decide on, like, let's just say 3 sizes of turbine engines, small, medium, and large.
Bingo.
Right? This is the size, build to that, create the market. Then I know if I can make that and make good margins, then I'm just going to chunk away.
Yeah.
Right? And my theory behind that is that In this space we're in right now, there's so much vertical integration. You've got to vertically integrate in order to make up for some of those supply chain gaps, in order to differentiate your technology. There's just wild competition of a lot of vertically integrated companies. And so with that is unique designs, unique value propositions, unique propulsion systems, unique manufacturing methods, right? Until we can start to standardize some of that, we're going to have just a battle of 1,000 unique things.
Yeah. Our thought at Firestorm is that because of how fast the war changes in Ukraine, you have to build modularity in your systems from the ground up. But it goes beyond that too. We just view the supply chain as incredibly fragile, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we integrate with almost a dozen different engines.
Yeah.
So that my personal belief is, if there was ever a conflict where we expended all of our systems in the first 48 hours, then it will be about who can get a drone in the air the fastest. And I have a feeling the NDAA compliance guidelines will go dramatically out the window.
Right.
Because if you have 100,000 optical sensors that you're going to need to put on 100,000 drones available, but maybe they come from China, you're probably going to still put them on your drones because you need them.
And whatever you can do to get into the fight.
Right. So it's like there's this gap between we actually have the resiliency for our domestic supply chain, which will take years. Let's just be totally honest.
Oh, yeah.
And the need to create a hedge force to hopefully prevent, the bad guys around the world from taking advantage of kind of what they've been able to do with drones. That's at least our thesis. And I don't know if it's right or wrong.
I've had some conversations with colleagues of the idea of surge requirements, call them,
Exactly.
right? Break glass in case of emergency. These will be the new standards. And the approach I like about that is you're being thoughtful up front about an impending, very possible doom that you can plan for now and say, when that happens, I'm not going to hold you to X, Y, and Z anymore, but where can we lower those requirements to and still get the job done? Like, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's the same thing. That's why we designed the modularity, right? Which is like, we have our fully NDA compliant line, but we also have something that is substantially cheaper and we could probably scale much faster, right?
Yep.
Specifically around optics, in my opinion. I think that's the big limb fact right now.
Yeah.
See a bunch of people, especially a lot of SpaceXers, coming out saying we're going to build propulsion systems for small UAS. Great. We need more micro turbines. We need more 2 and 4 stroke, propeller driven engines. But optics is, I think, that's the big one. I see the rest of the supply chain from our conversation starting to keep up. So, it's something we've even looked at investing in ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, the suppliers just aren't here. And if they are, they're overtaxed with, and then the defense market always has a unique problem too, in that defense quantities are big, but they're not big on, let's say, an iPhone scale, right?
Bingo.
So good luck getting an electronics manufacturer to build you, 10,000 of something. They don't get out of bed for that, right?
No.
They're volume players.
No. You literally get maybe like 10 a week for 5 years. That's how they would do it, right? We'll have one guy running the line.
Yeah. When that machine's built.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the other manufacturing improvements or interesting things you've seen just for all things unmanned. And it could be air, land, or sea.
Yeah. That's a fun one. So I think, one angle that I think is compelling is the one you're taking at Firestorm, right? Like, your product is UAV, but your product is also building that UAV, right? So I think that's an interesting vertical integration play that I think makes a lot of sense. I think that we really need to wake up on 3D printing too.
Yeah.
If you look at the publicly available information about the infrastructure that China is building, where they are stockpiling capacity in the forms of buildings with tons of 3D printers in them, knowing that, yes, that technology has a ways to go, but we're doubling down on capacity. And so they're pushing parts out there at wild volumes. And in doing so, learning the problems, understanding where the process needs to improve for more industrialization. So I think that's a really interesting angle. The other one, and this is maybe a little bit more generic to manufacturing in general, but I'm still trying to figure out how we vector towards a pattern that looks more like SaaS in the IT world, right? When we build something, it would be the equivalent of having to make a different software build for every possible phone you might use, for every different chipset that sits behind that, for every operating. Like we have there's just not standardization in manufacturing like there is in the software world. And so we end up doing so much bespoke work. We run into so many unique problems in that space. So to me, thinking about how digitization runs through manufacturing, that's a really interesting one it's going to take probably 10, 15 years to really play out as AI and robotics and all of the information that needs to be exchanged between companies in the supply chain. Like that's the big reorg that I've got my eyes looking at.
So is that like, if I was going to say, hey, look into your crystal ball, what does the next 2 to 5 years look like in your space? Is that where you think we start seeing some dramatic movement?
Yes, I think it's not a technological stretch to start to build networks of manufacturers, like the IT infrastructure. We've got that tech. The problem is the business models, the IP protection, like the structure of the supply chain becomes less proprietary and more modular, right? Like that disrupts people's business model. And so I think that to me is like a step number one of saying, almost reflective of the internet itself, like build the internet. And then in the years that follow, we see all sorts of new business models, creative use cases that we hadn't thought of, et cetera. We know that this infrastructure is going to be needed. We just don't know how it's going to be used, how it's going to shape out. So to me, the next 2 to 5 years, I think you're going to see a lot of movement there.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
It's like basically lay the wires and let's see how it
exactly
how they use it.
Yeah. I mean, we're in an interesting time. Information is one of the great problems of our age, and we're just getting our head around it on a lot of levels. And information to me means, what does a product development process look like? Like if you're vertically integrated, you can have a tighter product development process that touches every aspect of that value chain, right? But what does it look like in the future where you have the equivalent of data centers, right? Where you have the equivalent of iPhone and Android and then everything else, whatever, right? Where you have some of that standardized infrastructure to build on. That's what we're trying to figure out where manufacturing goes. The piece that concerns me about that is that we don't own the supply chain on robotics. AI is early innings, right? A lot of policy and other implications. Let's see where we go on that. But a lot of these underlying technologies that are going to feed into the future of manufacturing, we either don't own the supply chains on necessarily, or we've got a lot of creative destruction to do in those industries to see how it rewires.
You've started businesses, right? You've had a very interesting journey. If you were going to tell yourself at 22 or 23, right, anything, what advice would you give yourself when you were, in retrospect?
Yeah. I think I'd keep it simple and just say, don't worry about it. It's going to work out. And I think myself and probably a lot of other people on this planet spend too many cycles in their mind trying to understand the future and how painful it's going to be and all the problems. And so I'm proud of my younger self for making some career pivots that didn't look natural, and that people said, you sure? You've got a good job in engineering and you're going to quit and join the Marine Corps, right? So I think I would encourage even more of that exploration about career, exploration about what's possible. And then if my younger self had taken away a little bit of caution, like, who knows?
Yeah. Treat life like an adventure.
Right? Yeah. And you're going to learn,
for it.
Throw yourself in there. You're going to survive, right? Things are going to be stressful, but life is good. You can pivot if you're on your toes.
So Travis, if people want to find you or reach out to you online, what's the best website or way to do that?
Yeah. LinkedIn for sure. That's where I keep it active. I love the conversations. I share what I can about what DIU's up to. Just follow me on there. And of course, my LinkedIn inbox is a raging dumpster fire, so it might take a couple shots to get in there, but
I feel that pain tremendously.
And I blame some of that on LinkedIn.
Totally.
Like, why is it so hard for me to look through this inbox?
I know. Right. Let's just have one thing called recruiters.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be 80% of it, right? They just hide what they want in their message. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So my sister, if you're listening, because you worked at LinkedIn, solve that problem for us.
Solve it, please.
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes every Tuesday wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.